and I'm delighted to hear that the Fire Brigades Union are coming out and saying that they're, you know, more concerned with saving people and no banks.
We save people, not banks.
It's a scandal, really, the change that they're pushing through.
You are first a person. You are first a person. Don't let these people, these Michael Goves, these Chris Grillings, don't let them wreck your life. Don't let them get to you psychologically. Remember, you have worth as a person first. And then comes the work. Then comes the work. Then comes the fight.
We Save People, Not Banks is a group of individuals who have come together to offer a voice for those without one and for those waiting to find one. They come from all areas of society and are disgusted by the ideological austerity and cuts that everyday hard-working people are facing after first Labour and then the Tories bailed out the banks to the tune of £1.5 trillion. We have been forced to pay for their mistake once, but are now being forced to pay again, as our beloved NHS is sold, the fire service is privatised and even the Royal Mail and the Queen's Head is now for sale. Teachers and education, legal aid, entire infrastructure is being sold to the highest bidder to pay for a crisis that we, the working poor, did not create. We will be making videos to highlight how, where and why our freedoms and services are being siphoned off and sold. We have to start taking a collective stand. This is how it starts.
We've recognised that banks are undercapitalised for the tasks that they've got to carry out. We will not get to the root of the problem until we have stronger banks and stronger banks that are also now ready to do the medium-term lending that is necessary.
So the big problem with money is if I ask you where does money come from, if I ask most people in the street, they would say, well, it all comes from the Bank of England. But actually that's just a small percentage of all the money that exists. It's actually just 3% of money comes from the Bank of England. So where does the other 97% come from? Well, the way the system works today means that 97% of all the money that exists is actually created by banks, and it's created by banks when they make loans. So when you walk into a bank to take out a mortgage, that money isn't coming from somebody's life savings. It's actually just new money that's basically created out of nothing through the accounting that banks use when they make loans.
What is the purpose of the banking system? The purpose of the banking and financial system is to provide the funds that are necessary, commercially of course, to businesses, to homeowners, to ordinary families, to show that people can feel secure about the deposits they have, the savings they've got, and the financial transactions they carry out. It's an essential element of an economy, and those people who are attacking banks as if you can make an attack on the banking system are wrong. Where there is irresponsible action, we've got to deal with it, but we need a strong and strengthened banking system for the future.
Barclays, fixed LIBOR rates, committed fraud, number of people arrested, 0.
Look, what's happened over the last year is that standards of living have been hit because of rising petrol prices, rising gas and electricity prices, and rising food prices. These have been the major problems that have caused both the rise in inflation and people's standards of living being hit. Now, at this moment in time, oil prices are actually coming down, and so too are, fortunately, the costs of food around the world. There is a long-term problem about the shortage of oil in relation to demand and food in relation to demand, but for the time being they're coming down. We've got to sort out the long-term problem, that's a diversification in energy, better food production, but in the short term inflation after a few months will be coming down as a result of the changes in the oil and food prices. Now the issue now, however, for people is the credit crunch and the access to money, the cost of money, the availability of mortgages, and that's what we're trying to deal with this programme. So if I'm saying that the global changes have brought up two problems, not one, the problem of commodities being too expensive and the problem of the credit crunch, we've got to deal with both of these problems, but as it happens, the inflation we've seen in the last year is actually going to come down quite soon. This is a problem affecting other countries in Europe, and for a while Europe thought it was immune from this, but you're finding that Landesbanks and all these people have some of these very bad assets. What we've got to avoid now is protectionism.
Her Majesty the Queen has asked me to form a new government, and I have accepted. And we have some deep and pressing problems, a huge deficit, deep social problems, and a political system in need of reform. For those reasons, I aim to form a proper and full coalition between the Conservatives and the Liberal Democrats. I believe that is the right way to provide this country with the strong, the stable, the good and decent government that I think we need so badly. I want to make sure that my government always looks after the elderly, the frail, the poorest in our country. We must take everyone through us on some of the difficult decisions that we have ahead. Real change is not what government can do on its own. Real change is when everyone pulls together, comes together, works together, when we all exercise our responsibilities to ourselves, to our families, to our communities, and to others. And I want to help try and build a more responsible society here in Britain, one where we don't just ask, what are my entitlements, but what are my responsibilities? One we don't ask what am I just owed, but more, what can I give? And a guide for that society that those who can should, and those who can't, we will always help.
It's just a cover for cuts in public services. You don't just want people to get involved, you want people to do the jobs that you're about to cut in the public sector?
Well, it's not a cover for anything. I mean, I was talking about the big society and encouraging volunteering, encouraging social enterprises, voluntary groups to do more to make our society stronger. I was talking about that way before we had a problem with cuts and deficit and all the rest of it. And this would be a great agenda whether we were having to cut public spending or whether we were increasing public spending. It's a good thing in itself, asking what is it, other than paying our taxes and obeying the law, that we all ought to do to make the country a stronger and better place? Lots of elements of the big society exist already. There are fantastic programmes and people out there doing incredible things in their communities. This is just saying, how can we do more? How can we make it happen in every part of the country?
Give us an example.
The situation is this, is that capitalism itself, we live under a system called capitalism. Even in America now, in the depth, or right in the heart of the financial institutions of capital, they refer to capitalism. Now, we didn't for a long period of time. No one wants to talk about the economic system and describe it as capitalism, because as soon as you do, you realise actually there's a system that's operating not in the interest of most working people. In fact, capitalism is based upon the drive for profits made out of working people, the hours that they work, the low wages that they have. And inevitably, if you can chart it on a map, virtually every 25 years, capitalism will come into crisis. Because this drive for profits forces down wages. Working people then don't have the income to buy the goods that are made under capitalism, and you have a crisis of overproduction and underconsumption. The last major crisis that we had of this sort was in the 1930s. Exactly the same thing, a speculative bubble occurred, eventually burst. In the 1930s, it's interesting, they did the same as what this government did. How do they restore the system? How do they save the system, basically? The way that they save the system is by trying to restore some sort of profitability to the operations of individual companies and countries as well. And the way that they did that in the 1930s is interesting. First of all, they started cutting wages, they started cutting public expenditure, and when you do that, it actually doesn't restore profitability, it means that actually you get a deeper recession. And that's exactly what happened this time. You go from a recession into a depression.
Delay this until the next election, until 2015, we get a new government in, then that might be the resolution that we're looking for. But I think for somebody who is as strong in his views and is lacking respect for evidence as Chris Grayling, then we may be in for a long way.
Austerity as a discourse harms the fabric of society, and it's used as a way to beat up common people, and it is operating through indirect mechanisms. Let me explain how. Once you accept the austerity discourse, you start thinking about financial services or any other essential services in the country in terms of financial means. Of course, societies have multiple considerations that they should have in mind when they are formulating their public, private and voluntary sector organizations, but financial considerations have never been at the heart of or at a leading position before. So with austerity measures, we have come to live in a society which is like a financial democracy rather than social democracy. We are a social democratic state, and we have to consider people not as means to an end, but as human beings.
What tends to happen, so if you think almost all of the money is created when people go into debt, if you want to get more money into the economy, you have to get people to go further into debt. If people say actually we have too much debt and it's time to pay some of that debt down, then the reverse process happens and money actually disappears from the economy. So you have a system where we rely on people getting constantly further into debt, and that's why the financial crisis was caused by people being in too much debt, and the government policy since then has been to encourage further bank lending and further debt. So they're using the cause of the crisis as though it's a solution.